Super, thank you. I'm Dr. Michael Preuss. I'll be speaking on behalf of 4 parties this morning. We are all in the Texas A&M University system, and I'll be talking about the international research exposure that was completed as part of the Lewis-Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation at Texas A&M University, and it focused on early career undergraduate engineering students. And is going to let me advance. There we go. All right, this work was completed under funding from the National Science Foundation. The grant numbers are listed here. That means that the things that I'm going to say this morning are my opinion and not those of the National Science Foundation, so please take that into account. The need for this information is presented here, and that is that first-generation students have been and remain less likely to persist and succeed in college. And there are known means for encouraging persistence and success among first-generation college students, but there's little empirical evidence for the application and successful application of those best practices in STEM fields. As a result, it's very important to pursue that, and this is especially the case with first-generation students who tend to be from minority populations, and minority populations are substantially underrepresented in STEM fields, and markedly so in engineering. And so the understanding of how an international research experience can impact students who are studying in engineering is an important opportunity to fill a gap in the literature. The program that I'll be speaking about is called the Engineering Learning Community Introduction to Research, but it goes by the acronym ELCIR, so I will be calling it ELCIR from this point forward. And the ELCIR program is for first-generation college students at Texas A&M College Station. Most of those students, approximately 90% of them or more in any given year, come from underrepresented populations. It's a 3-semester commitment in the spring, summer, and fall. And in the spring, the students are participating in preparatory seminars and completing the paperwork that they need to travel internationally. In the summer, they're in a 2-week experience in the Yucatan Peninsula. And in the fall, they return to Texas A&M and they complete research summaries and put together a poster presentation. The programming is intended for freshmen and sophomores so that it's a transition from the freshman year to the sophomore year through the summer. The time in the Yucatan involves living with hosts' families, participating in research classes as a cohort, completing lab visits, practical research experiences, cultural activities, and recreational activities. The research classes do carry a 1-credit-hour assignment so that it is a course completion. And this program has been offered annually from 2015 through 2019, but in 2020, of course, it was canceled because of COVID-19. The data we're going to be talking about comes from participants. In the fall, they return to campus and they're mentored in research summary and writing a research summary and in completing a poster and then doing a poster presentation. Many of them are offered scholarships through the Lewis-Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation to be part of ELCIR. And so at the end of the fall experience, the LSAMP sponsored participants are asked to complete a survey. There have been 115 LSAMP sponsored individuals in the 5 years that we're talking about. 91 of them completed a survey, which is a pretty good response rate and meets the 95% confidence level with a 5% margin of error. The sample is also representative. We compared it, we know the demographics of the 115 people, so we compared those of the 91 respondents to the 115, and it is representative, but we slightly oversampled females and white participants. And the reason we know that is that the survey includes 4 demographic questions, and then there are 18 closed-ended and 4 open-ended questions. And so here is what we found out about ELCIR. The topics that I'll be talking about are international travel, study abroad, desire to have a similar experience, impact on continuing engagement with research, confidence in international travel, awareness of, interest in, and plans to attend graduate school, the affordability of graduate school, the perceived likelihood that their parents would support them in graduate study, the highest degree they will seek, the impact on their interest in employment outside the United States, and on career choices. So we've got a lot to cover quickly. 47 of the 91 individuals had traveled internationally, which we can't do much with because this is pretty much descriptive, but that is interesting given that they were first generation college students who often come from lower income backgrounds. Their prior study abroad experience, 3 of the 91 had prior study abroad, and we checked to make sure that that would not impact the ratings that they provided, and it did not. Their interest in a similar experience, 95.6% of the respondents agreed or strongly agreed that they would like to have a similar experience after their initial experience in the summer. And there were a variety of reasons that they gave for this, but all of them were related to personal growth. So that's a pretty good outcome for this project. They were also asked about their continuing interest in engagement with research, and 84.5% of them indicated that ELCIR had made them want to continue or even increase their continuation in involvement with research. The next thing they were asked was whether they had picked up a new research commitment in the fall semester at the end of their ELCIR participation, and 15 of the 81 had, and that sounds kind of small, but it's worth noting that they still had ELCIR commitments. They were going to have to complete a research summary and do a poster presentation. So on top of that, 15 of the 81, and it's 81 rather than 91 because this question was not asked in 2015, but 15 of them, or 18.5%, started a new research commitment, which seems like a pretty positive outcome given that 25% on average of all Texas A&M University College Station engineering students participate in undergraduate research. The impact on confidence in traveling abroad was pretty significant. 91.1% of the students agreed or strongly agreed that having had this experience made them more confident traveling abroad, and most of them strongly agreed. This does include those 47 people who had already had international travel experience. And it's worth noting there was one participant who had an idiosyncratic negative experience that's reflected here and in some other responses, but that person did pick up new research commitments and intended to move on to graduate school. So while they had, for some reason, an unpleasant experience during the summer, it did not deter their professional goals. The impact on awareness of graduate school, this and several other questions were retrospective pre-post participation questions. So after the fact, we asked the people what they had thought beforehand and then what they felt at that time. And in terms of impact on awareness of graduate school, the results skewed strongly toward increased awareness. The same happened in interest in graduate school. Post-participation interest was 278% of pre-participation interest. And then the plans to attend graduate school. Only 7 of the participants said they did not, after ELCIR, intend to plan or did not intend to participate in graduate school. And there is a listing here of how those shifts took place, but I will not go into that for the sake of time. 64.4% of the respondents said that they would like to go to graduate school, but they just didn't see how they could afford it. And this may be impacted by their relative youth, their first generation status. All of them were first generation college students, and potentially having insufficient information about graduate assistantships and research assistantships and fellowships that are generally available to graduate students in engineering. Lastly, they were asked about the perceived likelihood of the family support for graduate school. And this is important to note because most of these students were first generation college students, And many people believe that first-generation college students, in fact, this exists in the literature, don't have strong support from their family for pursuing graduate degrees. But 83.3% of these students responded that strongly or at least agreed that they felt that their parents would support them in the pursuit of a graduate degree. And that's reflected then in the number of people who intended to pursue a graduate degree, 46 of them, and 13 for doctorates. There were 22 who indicated that a master's degree would be their highest degree, but that is, while it seems inconsistent with the very high response for people that felt they would have family support and that they would pursue a graduate degree, it's worth noting that 13 students had said that they would stop out between their bachelor's degree and their master's degree. And so the 7 that won't go and the 13 who said that they were going to stop out is very similar to the 22 who thought that who answered this question with a bachelor's degree as their top degree. The impact on interest in employment outside the United States is also interesting and important because engineering is increasingly an internationalized pursuit. Many American entities that practice engineering have international contracts and send their employees into international settings. And so 70 of the 90, one person did not respond, agreed or strongly agreed that being an LSAMP caused them to have a greater interest in employment outside the United States. The last question asked was whether it had impacted their career choice. And those answers were not as strong. 52.2% said that it had. They either agreed or strongly agreed, but looking at 91 participants, 52.2% were just above the neither agree or disagree. And that may be because these are early career engineering students who probably don't have strongly defined career goals. And it is also probably related to LSAMP not having a strong focus on career choices as part of their programming. So, in summary, the things I think are most important to note here is that a short-term international research experience for early career engineering students that was encapsulated in the 3-semester training and experiential learning community appears to impact students' confidence on traveling abroad, interest in continuing with undergraduate research, awareness of, interest in, and plans to attend graduate school, and interest in employment outside the United States, all of which are important for engineering students, particularly undergraduate research, which has been shown to be a strong supporter of persistence and success. And then that 83% of the first generation and predominantly minority students felt that their families would support them in pursuit of a graduate degree. That is a significant departure from the information in the literature. And while it may be an anomaly, it might also signal a shift in that understanding among the Hispanic population in Central or even much of Texas. Further investigation would be required. This study is, of course, had some limits. It's almost exclusively descriptive in nature. Our information came from survey and self-report, so it can't be validated. There was a small sample, but it does meet the 95% confidence level. And it's from one institution, although that institution is a land grant entity and an R1 that attracts students from across the United States. So that is the full presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much,